If I had to pick the single biggest reason most people stay poor, or at best middle class, their entire lives, it wouldn't be bad investments, it wouldn't be low salaries, and it sure as hell wouldn't be bad luck. It would be one four-letter word: highlight debt. I spent 99 years watching smart people destroy perfectly good lives with borrowing, and right now, the average millennial carries more than $100,000 in total debt: student loans, credit cards, car loans, you name it, while earning less in real terms than their parents did at the same age. That's not a crisis. That's financial suicide in slow motion. In the next 35 minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly why debt is the most expensive mistake you'll ever make, why almost everybody gets it wrong, and the dead simple strategy that kept me and Warren out of the poorhouse for 7 decades. Stick around. Your future, highlight writ. Self will thank you. Let me tell you something that will sound almost heretical to most people under 40 these days. The single biggest reason you're going to stay ordinary, or worse, broke, for the rest of your life is not a lack of talent, not a lack of opportunity, not even a lack of hustle. It's one simple 4-letter word: debt. I've had 99 years on this earth, most of them spent watching very smart people do very dumb things with money, and I can tell you with perfect certainty that nothing, no bad stock pick, no failed business, no market crash, nothing destroys more human potential than the quiet cancer of borrowing money you can't pay back tomorrow. Right now, the average millennial is walking around with over $100,000 in total debt. 100,000. Student loans, credit cards, car notes, personal loans, buy now, pay later plans for $1,000 sneakers and gaming chairs. And the worst part? You're earning less in inflation-adjusted dollars than your parents did at your age, while the cost of everything real, housing, healthcare, education, has tripled or quadrupled. That combination is not a rough patch. That is financial suicide in slow motion. I've seen it up close. Brilliant young lawyers making $300,000 a year who can't quit their soul-crushing jobs because they're shackled to 6-figure lifestyles built entirely on borrowed money. Doctors who spent a decade in school and training, finally earning $500,000 a year, still renting at 45 because every extra dollar goes to Sally Mae and the BMW finance company. Engineers at the big tech firms who look rich on Instagram but panic when the credit card bill comes because they have exactly 11 days of cash in the bank. Debt isn't just expensive. It's the most expensive thing you'll ever buy. Far more expensive than any interest rate suggests, because it doesn't just cost you money. It costs you time. It costs you freedom. Most of all, it costs you the miracle of compounding. Every single dollar you send to a lender is a dollar that will never, ever work for you in the stock market or in a business or in real estate for the next 30 or 40 or 50 years. Do that for a decade and you're casually, quietly throwing away millions, sometimes tens of millions, in future wealth before you even realize what you've done. I know this because I've watched it happen over and over again, and I've lived long enough to see the final score. The people who end life rich aren't usually the ones who earned the most. They're the ones who kept the most. And the ones who keep the most are almost always the ones who refuse to let debt eat their lunch. Warren and I started with almost nothing. We both had years where we were scraping by, but we had one unbreakable rule between us. We did not borrow money for consumption, ever. Houses, yes, carefully. Businesses, yes, when the math was stupidly in our favor. But never, ever for cars, furniture, vacations, clothes, or the 1,000 little status symbols that people use to prove they've made it. That single discipline, more than any brilliant investment we ever made, is the reason we sit here today with more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. Now, I'm not here to scold you. I've made plenty of my own mistakes. Lord knows I have. And I'm well aware that the world you inherited is harder in many ways than the one I grew up in. But the principles haven't changed. Debt is still a slave owner wearing a friendly smile and a low introductory APR. And the sooner you see it for what it is, the sooner you can stop volunteering to wear the chains. In the next half hour or so, I'm going to lay out exactly why debt is the silent killer of millennial wealth, why almost everyone gets this wrong, even when they think they're being responsible, and the dead simple strategy that kept 2 kids from Omaha from ever having to worry about money again. If you're tired of feeling behind, if you're tired of watching your paycheck disappear before you even see it, if you want the kind of freedom that only comes from knowing nobody owns you, stay with me. Your future rich self, the one who doesn't have to check the bank balance before buying groceries, the one who can walk away from a job they hate, the one who can actually sleep at night. is begging you to listen. Let me take you back to Omaha in the 1930s when I was a boy. My father was a lawyer, and even during the worst of the Depression, we weren't starving, but money was tight, very tight. If a family bought a new car on credit, the whole town knew they were either reckless or pretending to be richer than they were. Borrowing to consume was considered somewhere between embarrassing and immoral. You paid cash or you waited. That was it. Fast forward to today, and the average 30-year-old thinks it's weird, almost primitive, to pay cash for a $45,000 pickup truck or a $200 phone. They think the normal adult thing to do is sign a 6-year note at 8.9% and call it building credit. Somewhere along the line, we went from neither a borrower nor a lender B to, if you don't have a 790 FICO score, you're a loser. That's not progress. That's civilizational brain damage. Here's the cold reality nobody in the financial media wants to say out loud. Consumer debt is the largest toll ever invented on working class and middle class wealth in human history. Bigger than taxes, bigger than inflation, bigger than fees. Let me give you the numbers that should keep you awake at night. The Federal Reserve says total U.S. household debt just crossed $17.5 trillion. Of that, roughly $1.1 trillion is credit card debt alone, carried at an average interest rate north of 21%. That means the credit card companies are extracting about $230 billion a year in interest from American consumers. That's more profit than Apple, Google, and Microsoft make combined in many years, and almost all of it is coming from people who can't pay their balance in full every month. Student loans, another $1.7 trillion, growing by $100 billion every year. The average borrower now takes 21 years to pay off their loans, and 40% of them will either default or end up on an income-driven plan that stretches payments out to 25 years, with most of the balance eventually forgiven, meaning the taxpayer eats the loss and the borrower never builds real wealth. Car loans. The average new car loan is now $41,000 over 76 months at 9.2%. That means the average buyer is underwater the moment they drive off the lot, and they'll still be paying for that car long after it's in a junkyard. Add in the buy now, pay later apps, the personal loans, the 0% for 24 months furniture deals that explode to 29.99% the moment you miss a payment, and you have an entire generation that is systematically transferring the best years of their earning power to banks and lenders. But the truly cruel part, the part almost nobody talks about, is what debt does to compounding. Imagine two 25-year-olds. Both earn $70,000 a year after tax. Both get 3% raises forever. Person A has $600 a month in student loan and car payments. That's $7,200 a year going to lenders. Person B has no debt and invests that same $600 a month in a simple S&P 500 index fund at historical returns of 10%. After 40 years, Person A has paid off their loans and finally starts investing. They end up with maybe $2 million by retirement. Person B, they end up with over $3.8 million, almost twice as much, without earning a single extra dollar. That $600 a month difference, compounded for 4 decades, is worth more than most people's houses. And that's a conservative example. Many millennials are bleeding $1,200, $2,500, even $2,000 a month to debt service. Debt doesn't just cost you interest. It costs you the 8th wonder of the world. It costs you the one force that turns waiters into millionaires and janitors into multimillionaires. It costs you the only proven, repeatable path from ordinary income to extraordinary wealth. And the worst part? Most of you don't even feel enslaved. The chains are velvet now. They let you have the new iPhone, the nice apartment, the trips to Tulum. You feel free while you're actually selling your future one swipe at a time. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is the central financial tragedy of your generation. You were born into the greatest wealth creation machine in history, the American economy and the internet age, and the banks figured out how to siphon off most of the benefit before you ever see it. But here's the good news. It's reversible. Every single dollar you stop sending to lenders tomorrow is a dollar that starts working for you instead. And once you understand how completely optional this whole debt circus is, you'll never look at a 36-month same as cash sign the same way again. That's what the rest of this video is about. How to get out, stay out, and make sure nobody ever owns you again. I'm going to be blunt, the way I always am. The reason you're still in debt isn't because the system is rigged against you. It's because you keep falling for the same 4 mental traps that have been destroying ordinary people since Babylon invented interest. The banks didn't get smarter, you just got softer. Trap 1. The keeping up delusion. You look around and see your friends with new Teslas, renovated kitchens, and trips to Bali, so your brain whispers, if they can afford it, I can too. Wrong. What you're actually seeing is the greatest display of collective fake wealth in recorded history. I knew a young Berkshire executive, nice fellow, $180,000 salary, who bought a $950,000 house in the Bay Area because everyone at Google lives in Palo Alto. 5 years later, he was house poor, side hustling on weekends, and told me with a straight face that he couldn't afford to start a family until rates came down. Rates? He was making 4 times the national average and couldn't afford children because he wanted to keep up with people who were themselves drowning. That's not keeping up. That's slow-motion suicide by comparison. Trap 2. The future income fantasy. This one is lethal among high earners. I've watched doctors, lawyers, and software engineers borrow 6 figures in their 20s because I'll be making $500,000 soon, so what's $150,000 in loans? I knew a cardiac surgeon, top of his class, brilliant hands, who financed a Porsche 911 right out of fellowship. 10 years later, he was still driving the same depreciated car, still paying the note, and still working 80 hours a week in a specialty he hated because he couldn't afford to slow down. The future income never arrives in the quantity you imagine, and when it does, lifestyle inflation and taxes eat most of it. The only guaranteed raise is the one you give yourself by spending less than you make today. Trap 3. The just this once lie. You tell yourself the $28,000 wedding, the $5,000 vacation, the $200 dinner is just this once. Multiply just this once by 5 years, and you've got a $150,000 lifestyle you now consider normal. I saw it happen to a friend's son. Good kid, solid job at a tech firm. He put a destination wedding on credit cards because you only get married once, then the honeymoon, then the furniture for the new house, then the baby stuff. 5 years later, he was $110,000 in credit card debt, earning $130,000 a year, and wondering why he never had money. Just this once, repeated 100 times, is exactly how ordinary people become debt slaves. Trap 4, the worst one of all. I deserve it. This is the poison of your generation. You grew up being told you were special, that participation trophies were real trophies, that self-care means retail therapy. So when life is hard, you reward yourself with things you can't afford. New clothes after a bad week, a vacation after a tough quarter, a bigger apartment because I've earned it. I'm sorry to be harsh, but nobody deserves a $90,000 car on $70,000 a year. Nobody deserves a $6,000 kitchen renovation when they have $60,000 in student loans. What you deserve is the freedom that comes from owning your life outright, not leasing the appearance of success from Visa and MasterCard. I fell into a version of these traps myself once. In the early 1960s, I got cocky. I borrowed heavily on margin to buy control of a real estate development. Interest rates doubled overnight. The partnership blew up, and I spent the next several years digging out of a hole that cost me conservatively $10 million in future compounding. Even an old mule like me can get stupid when ego and easy money are in the room. Here's the hard truth. Every one of these traps feels rational in the moment. That's why they work. The banks and the advertisers and the influencers aren't selling you debt. They're selling you a feeling, status, relief, belonging, pride. And they're happy to let you pay compound interest for the rest of your life for 15 seconds of that feeling. The good news is that once you see the traps for what they are, ancient human weaknesses dressed up in modern marketing, they lose their power. You stop caring what your friends drive. You stop believing your future self will bail out your present self. You stop treating spending as therapy. And when that happens, the game flips. Suddenly, the same paycheck that used to disappear now starts piling up. The same raises that used to vanish into lifestyle now go straight to freedom. That's when you stop being ordinary and start becoming dangerous, in the best possible way. But first you have to admit you've been played. Most people never do. I hope you're different. All right, enough diagnosis. Let's talk cure. I'm going to give you the exact set of rules that Warren and I followed from the day we had nothing until the day we had more than we could ever spend. 4 rules. Simple, brutal, and 100% effective if you actually do them. Rule 1. Never under any circumstances borrow money to buy a depreciating asset. Never. Not a car, not a boat, not furniture, not a vacation, not a wedding, not a phone, not clothes, not a damn espresso machine. If it goes down in value, you pay cash or you don't buy it. Period. The only two exceptions in 75 years have been 1. A modest house with at least 20% down and a 15-year fixed mortgage cheaper than rent, and 2. Business borrowings when the math is so obviously in your favor that you'd be insane not to. Berkshire still does this today, carefully. Everything else is financial herpes. You get it once, you have flare-ups forever. Rule 2. Treat consumer debt like the loaded gun it is. If you already have it, your number one financial priority, above investing, above retirement accounts, above everything, is to kill it dead. I don't care if you use Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, smallest balance first for the psychological wins, or the debt avalanche, highest interest rate first for the math win. Pick one and attack like your life depends on it, because your financial life does. When I was a young lawyer starting out, I lived in a cheap apartment, drove a beat-up car, and threw every extra dollar at old law school loans until they were gone. It wasn't fun, it was freedom. Rule 3. Build a cash fortress before you do anything clever. No stock picking, no crypto, no real estate flips. Nothing until you have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a boring high-yield savings account that nobody can take from you. I've watched too many clever young people turn a $20,000 Robinhood account into $200,000 and then lose the whole thing plus their house because one unexpected medical bill or job loss forced them to sell at the bottom. Cash is the margin of safety for real life. Everything else is entertainment until the fortress is built. Rule 4. Live on last year's income, forever. Every raise, every bonus, every tax refund, every side hustle dollar goes straight to debt while you have it, and then to investments once you're clean. Your lifestyle only upgrades after the war is won and the surplus is permanent. Warren still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. I drove a 10-year-old car until the wheels practically fell off. We weren't being cheap. We were buying something far more valuable than bigger houses or newer cars. We were buying time and options and the ability to sleep like babies no matter what the market or the world did. That's the entire strategy. 4 rules: no spreadsheets, no 37-step plans, no good debt versus bad debt mental gymnastics. Follow them religiously for 5 to 7 years, usually less time than you spent in college earning the loans in the first place, and you will emerge on the other side debt-free, cash-rich, and holding the most powerful wealth-building machine known to man. Your future earnings, unencumbered. I promise you this on my 99 years of watching money. Nothing will do more for your net worth, your peace of mind, and your actual happiness than getting this part right. The world will scream at you that you're depriving yourself, that you're missing out, that YOLO. Let them scream. In a decade, they'll still be making payments on last decade's lifestyle while you're quietly building a fortune nobody can see yet. That's how wealth is really built. Not with lottery tickets or clever hacks, with discipline that looks insane until the math catches up and everyone wonders how you got so lucky. You now know exactly what to do. The only question left is whether you have the guts to do it. Most people don't. I'm betting you're different. Let me tell you about 5 people I've known personally. No hypotheticals, no rounded numbers. Real human beings, real dollars, real endings. First, the disaster I still lose sleep over. Rick Guerin. Rick was one of the original partners with Warren and me back in the 1960s and 70s. Brilliant mind, made a fortune in real estate and stocks, then decided in the late 90s that the good life required a $3.2 million house in Bel Air, a second home in Aspen, and a Gulfstream share. He borrowed heavily against his Berkshire stock to fund it all. When the tech bubble popped and the margin calls came, he had to sell his Berkshire shares at around $40,000 apiece. Split adjusted, they're over $600,000 today. Rick went from being worth hundreds of millions on paper to scrambling for consulting gigs. He died a few years ago, comfortable but nowhere near what he should have been. Debt didn't just cost him money, it cost him a dynasty. Second, the quiet legend, Lee Lu. Lee came to the United States with $37 in his pocket after Tiananmen Square, lived in a basement, ate rice and vegetables, paid cash for everything, invested every spare dollar. By the time he was 40, he was running one of the best-performing hedge funds on the planet and is today worth billions. Same stock market as Rick, same opportunities. One refused to owe anyone anything. The other decided he couldn't wait. You can guess who slept better. Third, my own close call in 1962. I was 40 years old, doing well as a lawyer and developer, and I got greedy. I borrowed $300,000 on margin and personal guarantees to control a real estate partnership in Los Angeles. Interest rates doubled overnight, the tenants went broke, and the banks wanted their money. I spent the next 5 years liquidating everything I owned outside of my Berkshire partnership just to stay solvent. That $300,000 mistake cost me, conservatively, $10 million in lost compounding and 20 years off my life expectancy from the stress. Even old Charlie can be a damn fool when leverage and ego get in the room. Fourth, the Daily Journal Corporation. In 1977, I took over a tiny dying newspaper company trading at $10 a share with $2.5 million in debt and losing money every year. First order of business, we paid off every dime of debt in 18 months. Then we sat on cash like misers until 2009, when the world was falling apart and great securities were selling for pennies on the dollar. We bought. That little company compounded shareholder equity at over 20% a year for decades, turning $10 into more than $1,000 a share. No genius required, just no debt and a pile of cash when everyone else was terrified. Fifth, the millennial who actually listened, my friend's daughter, Sarah. She graduated in 2016 with $82,000 in student loans and a starting salary of $58,000 as a nurse in Denver. Instead of the normal, new apartment, new car routine, she rented a room for $650 a month, kept her 2006 Corolla, and threw $2,100 a month at those loans. She paid them off in 39 months. At age 28, she had zero debt, a $42,000 emergency fund, and started putting $2,500 a month into index funds. Today, 7 years later, she's 33, has a paid-for condo, over $300,000 invested, and just took a year off to travel because she wanted to. Her classmates who lived a little in their 20s are still making $550 student loan payments and praying for forgiveness that may never come. 5 people. Same country, same decades, same stock market. One common difference. The ones who refused to let debt own them ended rich, calm, and proud. The ones who thought they could handle just a little leverage ended up owned. I've run out of time on this earth to be polite about it. Debt is the only asset that reliably makes the banks rich and you poor. Everything else is noise. You now have the proof in front of you. Real names, real numbers, real graves. Choose which side of the list you want to be on. All right, the talking's over. You've heard the warnings, the stories, the math, and the rules. Now it's time to move, because insight without execution is just entertainment. Here are the exact 8 things I want you to do before next Sunday night, not next month, not when you feel ready, this week. If you do these 8 things, you will look back in 5 years and realize this was the weekend your financial life turned around. Pull your full credit report from all 3 bureaus. It's free at annualcreditreport.com, and make a 1-page list. Every single debt, current balance, interest rate, minimum payment. No excuses, no. I already know roughly. Write it down in black and white. Seeing the total is painful, but pain is a marvelous motivator. Pick your attack plan, snowball or avalanche. Snowball. List debts smallest to largest. Attack the smallest with everything you've got while paying minimums on the rest. Avalanche. List highest interest rate first. I don't care which you choose, I only care that you choose one and never change horses midstream. Sell something, anything, worth at least $500 in the next 7 days. Your extra TV, the mountain bike you rode twice, the designer clothes in the back of the closet, the unused guitar, Facebook Marketplace, offer up, whatever. The average American household has $7,000 and $15,000 of usable stuff lying around. Turn some of it into debt-killing cash this week. The psychological effect of watching a debt balance drop because you sold your own junk is priceless. Cut the bleeding. Sit down tonight and cancel every subscription you wouldn't happily pay for in cash tomorrow morning. Streaming services, gym memberships, beauty boxes, the $99.99 app you forgot about, gone. Most people free up $150, $400 a month in under an hour doing this. That's real money you're currently setting on fire. Call every creditor with a balance over $2,000 and ask for an interest rate reduction. Use the script. I've been a customer for X years. I've never missed a payment, and I'm considering moving this balance to a 0% offer from another bank. Can you lower my rate? Roughly half the time they'll knock 310 points off the rate just to keep you. I've seen 24% cards drop to 11% in a 5-minute phone call. Do it. Set up automatic extra payments. Whatever extra money you just created, from selling stuff, cutting subscriptions, and any side income. Automate it to hit your chosen debt the same day your paycheck arrives. No willpower required. If you wait until the end of the month, the money will vanish on takeout and Uber rides. Open or fund a high-yield savings account and set a second automatic transfer of at least $100 a paycheck into it. This is the beginning of your fortress. Label it "Do Not Touch, Emergency Only." Watching it grow while you kill debt is one of the best feelings in personal finance. Tell one person you trust what you're doing. Your spouse, your best friend, your sibling. Someone who will hold you accountable when you're tempted to buy concert tickets instead of making an extra payment. Shame and pride are powerful tools. Use them. Do these 8 things in the next 7 days and you will have more momentum than 99% of the people watching this video. You'll also feel something most debtors have forgotten is possible. Control. That's it. No fancy spreadsheets, no side hustles required yet, no deprivation diets. Just 8 decisive actions that put you back in the driver's seat starting this week. I've watched people half as disciplined as you're capable of being turn 6-figure debt into 7-figure net worth in under a decade by doing exactly this. I'm not going to be around much longer, and neither are the unusually favorable conditions you've taken for granted your entire adult life. When I was young, interest rates hit 18%. A recession wiped out half the jobs in some towns. There was no such thing as student loan forgiveness, income-driven, repayment, or buy now, pay later apps. You borrowed, you paid, or you went bankrupt and wore the scarlet letter for a decade. The world was harsher, but it was also clearer. Today, everything is softer, more forgiving, more seductive, and infinitely more dangerous because the consequences are delayed. You think another bailout is coming, another rate cut, another forgiveness program, another extend and pretend fix from Washington. Maybe, maybe not. What I know for certain is that every year you wait is another year the banks collect compound interest on your future. At 25, time feels infinite. At 35, you'll realize you've spent a full decade making someone else rich. At 45, you'll look at your peers who got serious at 28 and feel a quiet panic you can't admit out loud. At 55, you'll either be free or you'll be tired, permanently tired, because the debt never retired, so neither could you. I've attended too many funerals where the eulogy should have read, "He died at 68, still making payments on a boat he sold in 2012. Don't let that be you. You were born into the single greatest wealth creation environment in human history, the American economy after 1945, powered by the internet, with publicly traded companies that grow earnings 8 to 12% a year for decades. The game is not rigged against you. It's rigged spectacularly in your favor if you simply refuse to bleed money to lenders. The difference between the life you want and the life you're currently on track for is 5 to 7 years of living like most people won't, so that later you can live like most people can't. 5 to 7 years of driving a paid-for Civic instead of a leased BMW. 5 to 7 years of cooking at home instead of door dashing every night. 5 to 7 years of vacations within driving distance instead of flying first class on a credit card. In exchange, you get the rest of your life answering to no one. You get the right to say no to a boss you hate. You get the ability to take a year off, start a business, help your parents, or just sit on a beach at 45 watching the waves without checking your bank account. That trade is the best deal any human being has ever been offered in the history of the world, and millions of you are turning it down every day because the sacrifice feels too big right now. I'm begging you, as much as an old man who never begged for anything in his life can beg. Don't be one of them. Start this week. Kill the debt. Build the fortress. Let the money you earn stay yours, because one day, sooner than you think, you'll wake up and realize the game is in the fourth quarter. And when that day comes, you'll either smile at the scoreboard or you'll spend the rest of your life explaining to yourself why you didn't take the shot when it was wide open. I've done everything I can do from this side of the screen.